It is time for the pre-show, everybody. You're here for the next 10 minutes. We're setting up for our 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. All right, stream health is good. We'll just leave that there. I could probably put that on the left. No, on the right. There we go. We are getting ready to go with our first live stream of the year. How about that? Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Is it the first one of the year? It is the first one of the year. Absolutely. We are ready to go. All right, let's get all the things in order. I think we've got everything where it needs to be. Hey, everybody. Hey, chat room. We got lots of folks checking in. There, we got folks ready to take their exams, taking it this month. It approaches. That's a good way to kick off the year, I think. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope your holidays were good. I hope your family still likes you. That's always the barometer in my mind. I have such a low barometer. We've got it way down here. Does everybody still talk? Yes. All right. Holidays were great. We are fine. We're in good shape. So thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for checking in. We've got all brand new questions in today's study group, as we do with all the study groups. So we'll figure it out. We got a lot happening. On this side, you hardly even see anything going on. But I've got all kinds of little projects and things going on, and I came up with an idea this morning that might be a good one for the next set of study materials that I can create while we're waiting on other courses to be updated. There's lots going on. So thanks for checking in and hanging out with us here for the next hour or two, where we will ask questions from the 220-1101, and then I will open up the chat line or the chat room just to take questions in the second hour. So stick around for that. There is a lot happening. You know, usually during the holidays is kind of a slow time. People are traveling or not traveling, as the case may be this year, or trying to travel and not being able to. But it's a good opportunity to kind of sit back, sort of take into account everything that's happened. We had such a great 2022. We're really looking forward to 2023. It's going to be an amazing year, and we're so glad you're here with us. Speaking of good news, Maniacal Mank says, used your free content, bought a study guide, passed my A+ back in November. Congratulations on that A+. Now working on Linux Plus. Hey, that's a good one. I'm a huge Linux fan. Most of what we are doing here is Linux. So it is one of those things where it's always nice to see people finding what they are interested in and then going after that. And I think Linux is a good one to know. There's plenty of jobs out there that need Linux knowledge. Well, every job you need Linux knowledge. If you're working in IT, you need to understand Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. That's why all three are on the A+. So what is the difference between the previous and the new A+ exam? Sony Sonia asks. Well, there's quite a bit. I guess overall, there's 20 to 30% content is new in both of those exams. So it's an incremental change. It's a minor update, but it's minor enough that the changes really require you to go back and study all the new information. So if you studied the old one, make sure you study up on those new topics. You can compare the two different exam objectives to see what's new. But there's quite a bit that is new. So don't study for an old one and then go take the new exam. You're not going to do very well. That's just bad for everybody. Oh, we got about 6 minutes to go. Top of the hours when we get started. This is not the live stream. For people that have never been on the live stream before, watching the back of my head is not what we do. You'll see me eventually once we start this thing. I'll be in the screen, but we are just trying to figure it out right now. All right, I could probably turn that off. I think we're in good shape for the top of the hour. We've got a lot to go through, but that's a good one. Yeah, getting into system administration. Well, if you've got your Linux Plus, I mean that's all good. You're in good shape there. With your did you say you got A+? You got A+, and now you're working on Linux Plus. That's all good. That is all good. Oh, we need to turn off noisy things. 5 minutes to go. Mr. Sinatra, 5 minutes. We've got a lot. Oh, let's see how we can turn that completely down. Let's see what happens with that. .com Boom says studying, I'm assuming computer science, but that could be cybersecurity, depending on who you're talking about. But if it's at a university, I'm leaning towards computer science. Thinking of studying for the A+ cert for career prospects. Well, I guess that depends on what you're trying to do. Computer science, of course, is very focused on application development, programming languages, building apps, deploying new hardware, building drivers and software for that new hardware. It's not really an IT type thing. So if you're going into computer science, then the IT certifications probably won't help you very much. But if you're getting the computer science background because that's all that your local university offers in a technical level, which unfortunately is still the norm, then, well, sure, you can pivot over to IT. Having that knowledge in your pocket's always good. So the information, my website updated for the new A+ test. Yes, the latest A+ exam came out in April of last year. So all our videos have been updated since then. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't even think about that. I updated them. In my world, I updated them a long time ago, but it's really last year. It was really 2022. But yes, everything on my site is always updated for the latest exam version. That's very, very, very important. And being able to do that. I've got a lot. There's a lot of questions coming in. There's no way we're going to be able to get through all of these questions before we start the live stream, but we'll take a couple. Save them for the after show, though. There's a couple of really good questions in there I think other people might like to go through. So we'll see. We'll see what we do with that. So if should I get my A+ cert or Security Plus for beginners in IT looking to be a red teamer? This is a somewhat controversial topic, as it turns out. I didn't realize it because all I'm doing is kind of spitting out what I see in the industry. But if you take the number of entry-level jobs available to someone with no IT experience, the vast majority of those jobs will be help desk type positions. There are other jobs out there other than help desk for entry level, certainly, and I've never said otherwise. However, most of what you're going to find is help desk or service desk or field technician or some type of entry level position, because that's entry level. Security jobs don't tend to be entry level. There are some security jobs out there that are entry level. I've mentioned before about working in a SOC, a security operations center, where that's a great place to get an entry level security position. Although technically that's more of a first level answer the phone help desk for security, but it's in a SOC and that goes in your resume as a security person. So that might get things jump started in your area if you're looking for that type of thing. But you kind of have to work into security. Security covers many aspects of IT, which include hardware, operating systems, networking. It's a pretty intense field once you get to IT security. And you really do have to have a very strong foundation in operating systems, hardware, being able to understand what's happening on the network, understanding protocols. You need to know that before you can be a red team. So I recommend getting all of that experience to build up. It's got to be a strategy to build up into a cyber security position. So that's my recommendation. Other people think you should just jump right into security and you've got a security job, but nobody's going to let you touch anything without having a foundation of knowledge to do security. And I've had people tell me, no, you're wrong. There's plenty of security jobs out there. There is, but it's a very small minority of the overall available positions for entry level in IT. That's my only point. If you see an available security position that's entry level, absolutely go for it. Why wouldn't you? But I never said otherwise. That's one of those. King says, hey, Prof, want to let you and want to wish you and everyone here Happy New Year. Use your content to help supplement my studies. Was able to finish out last year getting A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Got the trifecta. And thank you also for the $10 super chat. I appreciate that as well. I didn't mention earlier the super chat that came in. Maniacal was a $4.99 super chat on that earlier one. So I I was a very bad host and did not mention that. So thank you. I'm of course incredibly grateful for all of those. Thank you so much for your support of what we do here. It's top of the hour. Let's get a live stream going. How does this work again? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2023 Professor Messer A+ study group. It's our 220-1101 A+ study group. That means it's for our Core 1 A+. This is the one that is generally the first course that many people will take when they are working on their A+ studies. Whenever I'm looking at trying to learn all of this content, it can be somewhat overwhelming. So today we're going to go through our A+ exam objectives. I've created brand new questions for you so we can hit those questions and try to figure out what will be the best thing to look at. What type of topics should we consider? I've got plenty of those to go through. And of course, I've got a lot in the after show. Stick around for that because we'll be taking questions from the chat room and making all of those things happen as well. If you are here live and you would like to follow along with our Q&A, I have plenty to go through. There we go. There's our links. You need to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. If you have an app that you would like to use instead of a browser, you can download the Socrative student app from your favorite app store. And if you do that, it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. And you'll see there's a question waiting for you right there. If you do either one of those things, there is a question there. Here's the question. I guess I should have it up so that I can see the question. I know, crazy, right? It seems like if you want to host something, you actually have to make sure that it's there. Here is the question. We call it our rewind question because it's one from last month. Let's see how well you remember this question. It asks, a developer is using a cloud-based service to build a custom application based on predefined modules. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, hybrid, or PaaS? Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Our standing rule, of course, in the chat room, please don't put answers into the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. We're going to put all of our answers into the Socrative front end that we have at professormesser.com/QA. Now, if you're watching this on a replay, that link is not going to be available to you. There won't be a question in there for you, but you can always follow along with what we're doing on the screen. We will be stepping through each one of those. So we'll come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. It's 2023. How did that happen? Suddenly, it's a new year. We're so glad that you're here joining us. And we, of course, have a lot of things planned for this year. There's a lot of content we're going to be creating, a lot of new videos, a lot of material. There's a lot of that we have planned. So we'd love for you to join us. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell if you'd like to be notified when we put a new video on our channel. Also, you can follow our daily pop quiz questions for A+ at professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram. So those are both the same question, but one is on Twitter and one is on Instagram, so they look a little bit different. On Instagram, you get a pretty picture with those. We'd love for you to join us there as well. Don't forget that we will be giving out a continuing education unit credit sometime in this first hour. So listen in during this first hour. I'll explain more about that when we finally get to that point. But if you're someone who has already earned an A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification, or many of the others, and you would like to gather or earn continuing education unit credits, some people use those to renew their certifications, then listen in sometime during this first hour. If you don't have your certification yet, this won't apply to you. But for those of you that are listening in for those, sometime during this first hour, we'll make sure we get that information to you. Let's talk about what exams are available. The exams that are on my site, the videos that I've created, and everything that you see around A+ today is based on the version of exam called the 220-1101. and 220.11.02. Those were released, as I mentioned in the pre-show, those were released in April of 2022, so they're not even a year old yet. They're relatively new. They're in the very first part of being used here in the world of A+ certifications. We would estimate that these exams will retire somewhere around October of 2025. So the point to that, of course, is that if you are working right now towards the 1101 and 1102 here in January of 2023, then this is the right set of exams for you, and you've got plenty of time to complete those exams. Both of those exams are 90 minutes long. You have to pass both of them. The 1101 you have to pass with a 675. The 1102 you have to pass with a 700. And the exams are graded on a scale from 100 to 900. Yeah, it's a weird grading scale, isn't it? And as we understand it, each question is worth a different number of points. I think they intentionally make it difficult to understand how they grade it so that no one will duplicate the process of how they grade it. In other words, don't worry about the grading so much. Just focus on getting every question right, and you'll do fine when it comes time to take these exams. Your certification, of course, once you earn it, is good for 3 years until you renew it. So this is one where you can lock in your exams right now, earn it, and then for the next 3 years, you are A+ certified. Let's also look at the topics that we'll be discussing today. The questions that I've created are questions that come from the 1101 or the what we call the Core 1 exam, and they cover mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So there's quite a few topics in there. It's very broad exams, and we'll be discussing topics from each one of those in the Q&A today. Stop by in a couple of days. On Thursday at this time, we do our Core 2 study group, and that one will, of course, cover a completely different set of topics. We, of course, make these available for you to watch afterwards. We always record these. The replay is automatically posted to YouTube. I also have an audio-only replay available in podcast format. If you have a podcast listening program or podcast program built into your mobile device, you can visit professormesser.com/podcast. You'll find all the links there to be able to listen in. If you are already on a streaming service like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, those already have my podcast already on there. So it's a great way to get an audio-only download of all of those. I also have a video replay available, but not only is the video replay there, you'll notice that there are timestamps in the video description on YouTube. Those timestamps, of course, have chapter marks, making it very easy for you to find what's there. This doesn't happen automatically. We have my marketing manager, Lori. Hey, Lori. Well, she is listening to this on the replay, and you'll see that these are posted about a day afterwards so that you can find exactly what you're looking for. And, of course, you can go back a number of years to find the information that you might need. When we're not doing one of these live streams, we have some great chats that go on in our Discord server. We have a great community there. We'd love for you to join us. You can find it at professormesser.com/Discord. There are also open invitations on my website, all of those little tiny social icons at the top. You can click on one of those. The one on the far right is the Discord. And that will, of course, take you to our Discord where you can participate. There's all kinds of chats and things going on. Make sure you check that out. Of course, eventually you're going to need to take your exam. You could, of course, go over to the CompTIA website and pay full price for a voucher, or you could go to professormesser.com and get a voucher that has already been discounted. You don't have to have any special coupon codes. There's no special extension that you have to add to a browser. They're just already discounted, and they're available on my site at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you do purchase a voucher there, if you're in the U.S. or Canada and some of the U.S. territories, I'll also give you my Exam Hacks ebook for free. So not only are you getting your voucher for a discount, you're getting more than you would get on other sites. So visit that website, professormesser.com/vouchers, or just use the voucher link at the top of the website to find all of those discounts. So let's go back to that question I asked earlier. A developer is using a cloud-based service to build a custom application based on predefined modules. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, hybrid, or PaaS? And of course, you can lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you answered this particular question. A very different set of answers than what we had last month. And it's indeed, I would say it's improved a bit. We have 57% of you that say it is platform as a service. That's what PaaS stands for. We have 34% of you that say software as a service. A good third of you specify that. 6% say infrastructure as a service. 3% say hybrid. And 0% say desktop as a service, although DaaS could be a number of different things in this world of as a service. The marketing people took that idea and they just ran with it. But in this case, the question is all about not only using a cloud-based service, but building a custom application yourself. And whenever you're building your own app, it could not possibly be software as a service, because software as a service is an app that's already been created. For example, if you use Google Mail, or you use Outlook.com, or you use any of the mail services, you don't have to program those mail services. You just log in and use them. But in this case, the question specifically mentioned that you will be building a custom application using predefined modules. That in itself is an exact representation, a platform as a service, where of course this is in the cloud. We're dealing with cloud-based services, but you are the one building the application. You can think of this as a bunch of Lego blocks that you're putting together and making things happen. Though whenever you start looking at the way to make all of these happen, these building blocks is one where you're doing the development. So it can't possibly be software as a service. Has to be something else. And indeed, platform as a service is the correct one, PaaS. 57% of you chose that option, and you got it absolutely correct. Some of these other options on here very quickly. DaaS, desktop as a service, is more for a VDI or a remote desktop type of configuration in the cloud. IaaS, infrastructure as a service, is one where you just get the hardware, sometimes operating system, but there's certainly no programming that you do at that point. You've already created the application and you're simply loading it onto a different infrastructure device. And then hybrid is more of a combination of public and private cloud. Doesn't have anything to do with building predefined modules. In this case, the only answer that makes any sense is answer E, platform as a service. And you did very well this time, much better than we did last month. So we might have either remembered that or we're doing better, I think. That's always a good sign. So congratulations to everyone who answered that question. Now let's shift gears a bit. For those of you that have never taken an A+ exam before, you may not realize that the exam itself is not a bunch of multiple choice-based questions. For example, the question we just looked at had a question and then multiple answers to choose from. So even if you didn't know the answer on that question, you had a 20% chance of getting it right anyway. Well, CompTIA knows that that is not always the best way to ask a question. If you really want to see if someone knows their stuff, we need to ask questions in different ways. And CompTIA begins the exam with a handful of questions that they call performance-based questions. Performance-based questions might be fill in the blank. It might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might put you at a Windows desktop and tell you to perform a function. Maybe it has things in a particular order, like highest to lowest or fastest to slowest, or maybe a drag and drop question. You can see there's many different ways to ask questions. The important thing here is that it's not multiple choice. Now, the questions themselves come directly from the exam objectives. So if you know your exam objectives, in my mind, it doesn't matter how they ask the question, you'll easily be able to answer it. So let's see, whenever we start looking through these questions, I have for you, as I always do in my study groups, a brand new performance-based question to start things off. So let's see this performance-based question. It asks, order these technologies from highest throughput to lowest. Now, before I do this, I'm going to flip this over real quick. I think I have the wrong slide up. I sure do, because I'm giving you the answers already, and that would ruin the whole thing. So now we're going to do, because this is live television, people. It's live broadcasting. So I have for you now a question that's not giving anything away. Order these technologies from highest throughput to lowest. So I have 5 different technologies here. And these 5 technologies are one stream of 802.11ax, USB 3.2 Gen 1, Thunderbolt V3, 1000 base T, and SATA revision 3.0. How's that for a quick edit? The chat room's very impressed, or they're embarrassed for me. One of those two things, and I'm fine with either. Order these technologies from highest throughput to lowest. It is one stream of 802.11ax. Is it USB 3.2 Gen 1, Thunderbolt V3, 1000 base T, and SATA revision 3.0. I want you to order those from highest throughput to lowest. And I've just turned on the questions on your side. So again, if you think you know the answer, please visit this link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to be able to answer those questions. You can, of course, go back and type these in. You could just type, if you think they're in the right order, A, B, C, D, E. So you don't have to type in the whole thing. You just need to put something in so that you've locked in your answer. And of course, always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to try to figure out what is highest, what is lowest, and everything in between. So this is more of a sorting question, not an unusual question to get for a performance-based question. Please go through and see if you know what this one happens to be. This is always a good thing to know. Imagine someone coming up and saying, we need to implement this technology. It needs to be the fastest it could possibly be. Which technology should we put in? Well, the only way to do that is knowing how fast these technologies go now. And having some relative understanding of the speeds of these technologies can also help you. For example, this is a really good example. So if somebody said, we need to connect this maybe external storage device, and we need to connect it at the highest possible speed. Do we use USB 3.2 Gen 1, or do we use Thunderbolt V3, or do we connect it to a 1000 base T network? You know, there's a very practical question that is associated directly with the topics that come from the CompTIA exam objectives. And that might help you in this particular question too. I can see a number of you putting in your answers and being able to do that. As many people are mentioning in the chat room, and it is a good thing to keep in mind, these questions, you could get more than one right or wrong. So this question is not everything right or everything wrong. You could possibly get some right and some wrong. So the question is, do you get partial credit for that? CompTIA said sometimes we might give partial credit, sometimes we might not. They don't tell you if you get partial credit or not, so that doesn't help us very much. The answer is we don't know, and CompTIA is not going to tell you on your exam. So we'll have to figure out. Some of these texts are obsolete, though. No, none of these texts are obsolete. These are all relatively new technologies, all running today in networks right now at your home, in your office. None of these are obsolete. No, these are all relatively. In fact, they're all in the latest CompTIA exam objectives, so not obsolete at all. They're all directly from the 2020-1101 exam. Let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to skip over everyone putting in their answers, and let's order these technologies from highest throughput to lowest. Now, if we look at the list, we have a stream of 802.11ax, USB 3.2 Gen 1, Thunderbolt V3, 1000 base T, SATA revision 3.0. We're ordering them from highest throughput. So which one is the highest? If we had to look at that list and figure out which one of these would be the highest, we would choose Thunderbolt V3, which is an aggregated total throughput of 40 gigabits per second. That's pretty darn quick, and that's why we tend to see a lot of Thunderbolt being used out here to connect to external devices. The monitors I use in my studio are connected with Thunderbolt, so a very nice type of connection for the things I'm running, because I have high-definition 5K type monitors. I need a lot of throughput, and that gives me plenty of throughput. Next fastest technology on our list would be SATA revision 3.0 at 6 gigabits per second. That is the signaling rate of SATA, not necessarily the amount of raw data or user data that we're able to transfer, but that is the underlying signal and how fast that signal goes back and forth with SATA revision 3.0 at 6 gigabits per second. Next on our list, in the middle of the pack, is answer B. USB 3.2 Gen 1 operates at 5 gigabits per second. We've got others here. After USB, we would choose one stream of 802.11ax, which is approximately 1.2 gigabits per second as its theoretical maximum. And then lastly, we've got, and the only one left, answer D, 1000 base T as gigabit Ethernet. So gigabit Ethernet obviously graphs or has a speed of 1 gigabit per second. So that is the 5 technologies listed out by highest throughput to lowest throughput. So at the top was Thunderbolt V3 at 40 gigabits per second, SATA revision 3.0 at 6 gigabits per second, USB 3.2 Gen 1 at 5 gigabits per second, one stream of 802.11ax at 1.2 gigabits per second, and then lastly, 1000 base T at 1 gigabit per second. Those are two very close there at the bottom. I'm not surprised. Some people are saying, oh, I switched the last two on my list, but that I could see how that would happen. They are pretty close to each other, and that's pretty much where those fit in the big scheme of things. Hopefully you're familiar with those. Obviously, all of these technologies are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. If you're not familiar with these, if some of the names look odd, or perhaps you're concerned that some of these may be obsolete, I would highly recommend you go watch the videos associated with these specific interface types so that you're familiar with how we're using these technologies today. Very useful. Yes, and of course, they're going to rename USB again as it's coming through and figuring out the details. Hopefully you did pretty well with that performance-based question. I like the ones where we're filling in the blank and sort of setting a different level, putting things in a particular order. Not unusual to see a question like this on your exam. Make sure you're not only familiar with the topics here, but with the style of questions as well. It might help you when you go into your exam. Let's shift gears back to a multiple choice-based question. This multiple choice-based question asks, a user's workstation randomly powers off without any error messages or warnings. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be a hardware diagnostics, check the monitor input source, check available space and defrag, replace the CPU, or upgrade the BIOS? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That question again, a user's workstation randomly powers off without any error messages or warnings. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be hardware diagnostics, check the monitor input source, check available space and defrag, replace the CPU, or upgrade the BIOS? Lock in your answer by visiting the link or visiting your mobile phone device app thing that you've downloaded and hit. I think it's easy. Most people probably just head over to professormesser.com/QA, but either one of those will work for you. And now you can put in what you think the best next troubleshooting step might be. Yeah, the USB names are a moving target. We never, when a new version of USB comes out, we always have to rename everything for some reason. They need to stop doing that. They need to stop renaming the different terms we use for USB. Although I would probably think that most people using USB don't even realize there's a version 3.1, version 2, or a revision or changes to it whenever you get through those. So there's a lot of things that are sort of oblivious to most people, but for us who are managing these devices, it is important to know that when we're looking at a box and it has a particular setting and tells you here's the standard of USB this follows, that we know immediately what the speed of that happens to be so that we can answer questions like the ones of what do we plug in, Thunderbolt or USB? Pick one. That is the way it works on those. See how you do with this. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again is, a user's workstation randomly powers off without any error messages or warnings. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Is it hardware diagnostics, check the monitor input source, check available space and defrag, replace the CPU, or upgrade the BIOS? How did you answer? 62% of you say you would run a hardware diagnostics. About a third of you, 34% of you, say you would check the monitor input source. 2% say check available space and defrag. 1% say replace the CPU. And 1% say upgrade the BIOS. So hardly anybody thought that C, D, or E were the right answers. This is an annoying problem, obviously, if you're on a computer and suddenly it just powers off. And it may not even give you a message. It may not give you a warning. Sometimes you'll at least get a blue screen. At least that will give us some information that we can go through. But if the entire system just shuts down with no messages on the screen whatsoever, then you're going to have to try a number of different things. Now, you could try the last known good, a system restore, rollback, try safe mode. But let's say nothing has changed on the system. In this question, there was no mention of adding a new driver, updating the system. It simply says it powers down, and it doesn't give us any messages. If we have hardware, we could try reseating that hardware, although that was not one of the available answers, so that's not one we would probably do first. But the thing that you might want to do, especially since we have nothing to go on, the system powers off, no error messages, no log files, no warnings, no nothing. So what we want to do is run a hardware diagnostic and determine of all of those 5 options that we had, that's the only one that can give us a little more information about what's going on. Hardware diagnostics can at least check the hardware and make sure that nothing is going wrong with our memory, with our CPU, with our storage devices, with motherboard components, and usually the motherboard manufacturer has a set of hardware diagnostics that you can run. Sometimes the storage manufacturer has a different set of diagnostics to run just for the storage device. A very good way to do it. So of the 5 options, we of course have to pick the best next troubleshooting step. And 63% of you indeed said hardware diagnostics of these 5 things is the one that would be the best next troubleshooting step. We did, though, have a third of you that answered check the monitor input source. And if you've ever reached over to a monitor and accidentally hit the input button, suddenly the monitor goes blank. And you can't see anything that's going on because you've changed where the video input is coming from. And obviously on your video input, there probably is nothing on that particular link that you've now selected. Maybe you switched it from DisplayPort, you hit a button and now it's looking for something coming from the HDMI connector, and you didn't plug in the HDMI connector, so the screen remains dark. So in that case, though, that's one where you would have had to touch the monitor in some way to have everything go black. And when you do that, it doesn't power off your computer. It simply takes the screen input and makes it a black screen. Everything's still running. If we were to go back to our input source and change it back to DisplayPort, everything would be back to where we were. That wasn't the scenario we had here. This says that the workstation randomly powers off with no errors or warnings. That would not be a monitor input source. That would simply be something else. Maybe the system is overheating. Maybe a hardware component has gone bad. Maybe we've got an issue with the motherboard. And so running a hardware diagnostics would be a great way to determine that. Checking available space and defrag. If you ran out of space on your system, you have a storage drive, and you run out of space on that drive, it's not going to power off your system. You'll get a message on your screen that says this system's not able to work anymore because your storage device is full, or your applications will give an error message saying can no longer write to the drive because the storage device is full. So it would not be checking available space, and a defrag is not going to help this particular situation where a system is randomly powering off. Replacing the CPU, that would be an extreme case. We would not start replacing things until we knew which thing was broken. Otherwise, we're spending a lot of time trying to replace a lot of different components, and we're not even sure if it's a hardware problem at this point. Replacing the CPU is also a pretty extreme answer. CPUs are relatively expensive. I would imagine, I'm trying to think back, when has there been a time in my career where I've had to replace the CPU that went bad? Maybe once on a server. This doesn't happen very often. So, and of course, the first thing you would do is to collect more information, not start changing things. So that's not what you want either. And last, speaking of changing things, you would not upgrade the BIOS either. Upgrading the BIOS can provide bug fixes and, in some cases, even new features for the BIOS of your system. But generally, you would never upgrade the BIOS unless there's a specific reason to. In fact, just don't upgrade it unless you have to upgrade the BIOS. There's one less thing to go wrong. In this particular case, the best of all of these options is answer A, hardware diagnostics, and 64% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. Let's got a multiple choice based question. We'll keep this going with our next question that asks, a company requires all mobile phones to include a lock screen. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this requirement? Would it be VPN, Active Directory, LTE, MDM, or IMAP? A company requires all mobile phones to include a lock screen. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this requirement? Is it VPN, Active Directory, LTE, MDM, or IMAP? If you know the answer, there's your link. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer and see what you would use to provide this requirement of all mobile phones, including a lock screen. Probably a good idea anyway, isn't it? Why would you not have that turned on already? But what we have to do, since we might have hundreds of mobile devices that we manage, we have to make sure that every single one of those is protecting the company's data. The organization's data is all in those mobile phones. So one of the best ways is one of these. Which one would you use? To put in your answer, lock it in. A lot of you put your answers in quick. I wonder if we all jumped on the right answer or if maybe it wasn't. We're about to find out in a moment. The question again is, a company requires all mobile phones to include a lock screen. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this requirement? Is it VPN, Active Directory, LTE, MDM, or IMAP? Let's see what you answered. Our results say a resounding, a strong 84% of you say it's MDM. Mobile Device Manager is what most people chose. The only other double digit, just barely getting there, is 10% of you that say it is Active Directory is what you would choose. Active Directory is a good choice, but not the right answer in this case. And then single digits, 4% said VPN, 2% said IMAP, and 1% said LTE. LTE quickly going away, isn't it? Wasn't it Verizon that just turned off all the LTE at the end of the year? So now no, all 4G and 5G on Verizon. I think AT&T already did that earlier. So that's the example we have here of MDM is a pretty good one. MDM, of course, stands for Mobile Device Management. We've got effectively all these mobile devices that somehow have to be managed. They somehow have to, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to manage all these devices. Oh, wait, I do know how we're going to do it. We're going to install a mobile device manager, register all of our systems in the MDM, and from there, we're now able to manage different aspects of the tablet, mobile device, the watch, and many different ways. MDMs have even expanded out to traditional operating systems, to Windows and Mac OS, so that you can go to one pane of glass to manage all of these different devices. So you might want to require the lock screen. You might want to have the camera disabled when people are inside of the building. Maybe there is a reason for doing that. You want to prevent anybody from taking pictures of the things you're working on inside of your organization. And if you're someone who is an administrator, you may want to make sure that there's a PIN, there is a face, there's some type of locking mechanism so that people can't easily gain access to these mobile devices. So absolutely the MDM of the things that you had to choose from, the MDM really is the best way to provide this requirement. The mobile device manager is kind of a common piece of infrastructure that we tend to have in our organizations today for that very reason. Now, 10% of you said Active Directory. And although Active Directory allows you to manage many aspects of the Windows operating system, our mobile phones are not Windows operating systems. Microsoft tried that. It didn't go very well. So now we effectively have on our mobile devices iOS, iPadOS, and Android. It's kind of it. That's what we choose from for our mobile devices, at least for the moment. So Active Directory, great for managing a Windows desktop, not so great for a mobile phone. So not the right answer we were looking for. 4% said a virtual private network. VPNs, of course, are a way to communicate to another device over an encrypted channel. In this case, we're trying to get a lock screen, not encrypt all of the data going over the network, so VPN would not be the right answer. 3% of you said IMAP. If you're needing to transfer mail from a system, IMAP is a very common mail protocol. So IMAP is not what we would choose to include a lock screen. It's what we would choose to be able to download mail from the mail server. And lastly, LTE, which I mentioned, most places are turning off, at least the 3G version of LTE. Now, that's not what we were looking for either. That is a method of communicating over the cellular network, but it doesn't provide or ensure that you can manage the device to have a lock screen on it. The only choice here, the one that makes any sense whatsoever, is MDM. And indeed, 82% of you thought that was exactly the right answer as well. I want to thank Napoli MS 445 in the chat room for the $10 super chat. Says, thank you, Professor Messer. Your videos and study groups are very helpful. Got my A+ more than a year ago. And you're back for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much. That is very nice. And congratulations on your A+. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. And thank you for your support of what we do here. That's useful as well. Let's see. Before we go to the next question, one of the things you've probably noticed already is that we've covered a lot of different topics and we're just getting started. We went through interfaces. We talked about dealing with security with MDMs. And of course, on your Core 1 and Core 2, there are so many different topics. In fact, you'll notice on the Core 1 and Core 2, 137 videos consisting of 19 hours of information. That's a lot of information. And I realize that most of you, many of you, may not be able to sit there and go through every single minute of every single video. So for that reason, I've taken all of the information in these videos and I've collapsed them into one single set of course notes. So this is the physical version of the 220-1101 course notes, a full color course note with all of the graphics, the tables, the text, everything that's important in all of my videos are in these course notes. I have course notes available for A+, Core 1 and Core 2, and of course there's Network Plus and Security Plus, and there are also digital versions of this. If you don't want the physical version, you can, this is the digital version I have on my screen right now, so you can see just an idea of all of the information that you might need to really capture all of the important information from the videos and put them in one place. This obviously doesn't replace your videos. It doesn't replace reading a book or doing labs or doing Q&A, but it is a great way to reference back to this wealth of information that we've created in our video course in one single place. And it's a great way to support what we do here. Find out more by visiting our website, professormesser.com/1101notes, or use the links at the top of the screen to find our Core 1 course notes. This might be something that can help you as you're doing your studies and planning to take your exams later on this year in 2023. See, I've already set you up for success. We're already going to be doing that. So hopefully you're looking at those notes. That might be something that you can use as well. Let's do another question. We've got more questions to go. This next question asks, a network administrator has found a firewall rule which allows TCP 110. What type of traffic would be allowed by this rule? Would it be file transfers, desktop remote control, emails, domain name lookups, or terminal sessions? A network administrator has found a firewall rule which allows TCP 110. What type of traffic would be allowed by this rule? Is it file transfers, desktop remote control, emails, domain name lookups, or terminal sessions? If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this is. Obviously, a port number question. We have to have a port number question at the beginning of the year, don't we? So, of course, one of the things you'll notice, though, CompTIA will never ask you directly these port number questions. They will never say what protocol uses TCP 110. They're never going to do that. They aren't going to do the I call them kind of a trivia question. You can think of them as a flashcard question. They don't really ask these questions. They want to know, how are these port numbers used? In what use cases would these port numbers be used? And hopefully this is a question that kind of gives you that perspective of what they might be. You can find those. See if you happen to know what port number TCP 110 does and where you might fit it into the big scheme of IT. Which one of these technologies best fits TCP 110? I did have somebody send me a note say it's just a port number. It could be anything. So correct. But it is a well-known port number, as we like to say in the industry. And a well-known port number is one that we all assume this particular service will be using so that we can find it and use it so much easier. You know, that is where we would, of course, find those. A lot of port numbers on the exam. Some of you in the chat room are going, what? Port numbers? Absolutely. Go to get your exam objectives right now. If you weren't aware of that, then you don't have the objectives yet. And I got to tell you, those objectives are so valuable. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam. You will be very secure in what you need to know after reading through those exam objectives. They are incredibly important. Have a look at those. That might be maybe something to help you as well. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, a network administrator has found a firewall rule which allows TCP 110. What type of traffic would be allowed by this rule? Is it file transfers, desktop remote control, emails, domain name lookups, or terminal sessions? You say, with 68% of you answering, that it is emails. 14% say it is file transfers, or as we say here, file transfers. We've got 8% that said terminal sessions, 6% that said domain name lookups, and 5% that say desktop remote control. 14%, at least we had double digits on this one when we talk about what people are able to do with this. File transfer was a good answer, but not correct when it deals with TCP port 110. Email is what we were looking for, especially the different types of email. You know, there are different ways to receive emails across the network. And of course, we've got other technologies that we may be able to use. The two that are most common are Post Office Protocol, POP3. It's the version 3 of the Post Office Protocol, and it uses TCP 110. Aha, there it is. There was the port number that we were looking for. POP3, not an incredibly important protocol these days. We tend not to use a lot of POP3, but if you are using a legacy device or you have an application that doesn't know how to communicate over IMAP, then you will need to use POP3. So you'll still see it out there being used every once in a while, every now and then, to be able to use it. So hopefully that's something you can remember. If you are using IMAP, which is the Internet Message Access Protocol version 4, or IMAP 4, then you're using TCP port 143, which obviously is a little bit different. You're going to be using a different protocol for that one. And I would say probably most of the non-Outlook based email clients are using IMAP by default, which is probably what it should be. IMAP 4 is one of the options, but of course POP3 is the other. Both of them are email, and that is exactly what we were looking for in this case with TCP 110. The answer indeed is answer C, emails. File transfers can be done over a number of different protocols. It might be SMB, it might be FTP, it might be FTPS. It could be a lot of different ways to do that. But file transfers do not commonly use TCP port 110. Email is not a very good way to do a file transfer. So that's not what we would use. We have 8% that's in terminal sessions. Those are usually done with SSH or Telnet. Those are port 22 and 23. Non-respectively. So terminal sessions is not what we would use. 6% domain name lookups would probably be using an NS lookup. It would be using a DIG or just a natural DNS lookup from your system. And that's using a UDP port 53, not TCP 110. And then lastly, desktop remote control. Again, a lot of different ways to make that happen. It could be a VNC. It could be a Microsoft RDP. A lot of different ways. But remote control is not commonly used over TCP port 110 either. If we are allowing traffic through our firewall and we've configured TCP port 110, then most likely we're doing that to allow access of email through the firewall. Exactly what we were looking for. You are spot on with that one. 68% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I've got some more. Let's see if we can make this happen. We've got next question on our list is this question that asks, an administrator has changed a switch on a power supply from 120 to 230. Which of the following is associated with these values? Is it a max combined wattage, an input voltage, a max current, battery backup amps, or redundant power capacity? An administrator has changed the switch in a power supply from 120 to 230. Which of the following is associated with these values? Is it max combined wattage, input voltage, max current, battery backup amps, or redundant power capacity? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen, ProfessorMesser.com, to lock it in and make sure you know what the answer is. Hey, Malk showed up. Hey, Malk, thanks for being here. You can come in late. It's not going to bother me. We're good. I just thank you for being here. I thank all of you for being here. You can stop in whenever you'd like. There is never a bad time. Thanks for being here. This is a good one. This really comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with it. Whenever you deal with power, and I have a lot of information in the videos about managing power and troubleshooting power configurations, a lot of good power options in there too. So we'll have to see. If you're someone who's working with hardware, and you will be if you're doing anything in IT, it's important to know some of these options for the hardware and the power that you'll be using with those. Always good to know what that happens to be. This is a question a lot of you, I think, know as well. I can kind of see as you're answering the question, I'm always looking at the results and the number of people answering them. And when it goes up really quick, I think, well, we either all know it or we all got it wrong. There tends to be one of those. So I kind of watch as we're going through to see how quickly that moves up. The question, again, asked, an administrator has changed a switch in a power supply from 120 to 230. Which of the following is associated with these values? Is it max combined wattage, input voltage, max current, battery backup amps, or redundant power capacity? Sounds like it could be any one of them. Let's see what you say the answer is. And 74% of you, a very strong showing, say it's input voltage. However, 12% of you say it's max combined wattage. And then we have single digits, 7% say it is max current, 6% say redundant power capacity, and 1% say battery backup amps. Well, if you are looking at the back of a power supply and it has a physical switch on the back of it that is labeled 120 and 230, it is referring to the voltage, the input voltage on the power supply. Specifically, probably based on where you happen to live in the world, or where this computer is going to live in the world, is where this number comes from. In the US and Canada, for example, you would be setting it to 120 volts of alternating current. And if you are elsewhere in the world, like Europe and other places, you might set it to 230 volts of AC. Now, it will depend on where you happen to live as to what voltages a system needs to be set to. And this would, of course, really only be if there's a manual switch on the back of your computer. Now, many of power supplies, if you look at power supply that's on your computer, you may not even see a switch. There's nothing there. Usually it is a red switch. You can sort of see it in this image. It's that switch that's right next to the power outlet, and it has 120 and 230 written right on it. But if you don't have one of those on your system, then it is probably an auto switching power supply. It can probably automatically determine what you're plugging into and set itself for the appropriate input voltage. That really is one of the best ways to go. Then you don't have to worry about, did I set it correctly and plug it in before. Now, if it does have a switch and you're not quite sure what the voltage is in your particular area, now it's time to get out your multimeter, plug it into the outlet, and get some information on how much voltage is in that particular outlet that you happen to be using. What you don't want to do is plug in a 120 volt power supply into a 230 volt power source, or you'll find that all of the magic smoke will come out. And the magic smoke, of course, is what keeps this entire thing working. If you let the magic smoke out, it stops working. So don't do that. We don't want any of those to happen. Here's a better picture of this switch. And it will have on it probably a voltage number on it, so you know exactly what that's referring to. This power supply is set to 230 volts. Now, if you're in the US and you set it to 230 and plug it in, probably not going to have a problem because it's not getting enough voltage. You're not going to blow it out. You're not going to create a problem. The smoke is going to stay inside the system, but it's just not going to work. So your biggest problems are if you do it the opposite way. Don't make that mistake. You really only make that mistake one time. It is quite a remarkable event when you happen to have a power problem. The important thing is you keep yourself away from the power. You don't touch anything related to the power. You make sure that if you are working inside of a computer, you disconnect all of the power, regardless of what other people in our industry might tell you. They are wrong unless you're really needing to look at power inside of your system, and that's a completely different scenario where you're getting a multimeter in there and using it. That's what you would use. The answer here, of course, input voltage is what we were looking for. That is the right answer. And indeed, there is no other option on here that makes any sense. Max combined wattage is really referring to how many watts on the inside of this system it can support. So you can run all of the different devices, the drives, the video cards, and the other components inside of your system. So when we see that a power supply is rated for a certain wattage, that is the max combined wattage for that power supply. Max current would be the number of amps provided on each of those rails. We call them rails, which are the types of voltages inside of the system. That's not what we were looking for when we're changing the switch from 120 to 230. It doesn't really change our max current. Battery backup amps. This is not a battery backup. It's a power supply, so that one doesn't apply to any of this. And lastly, redundant power capacity. There's no redundancy here. Using those switches don't provide any redundancy. We'd have to have two separate power supplies to have redundancy. And in this case, the 120 and 230 are not referring to that. They are referring to the voltage input that we are using inside of our computer. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would like to send you an email that provides you with a 1-hour CEU, a webinar category CEU to be precise. And the way that you would receive that email is you must follow these directions. This is where you want to go. The question that we're looking for is, or the thing that we're looking for you to do is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. In that website is a Contact Us link. You'll find that at the top or the bottom of the website. Click that link. It brings up a form. In that form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put January 2023 Core 1 study group or something like that so that I know where this question came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, input voltage. Input voltage is the super secret code word of the month. You can, of course, put other things in that message as well. You're welcome to put anything. I read through every single one of those, and I love getting your messages. I love reading through all of them, but I get a lot of these every month, and I'm not able to reply back to all of them, or else I probably wouldn't be doing anything else in my life. But if you follow those instructions and send that to me in about a week, I'll send you back an email that certifies that you must have watched this, and I'll send you a digitally signed email so that you know it came from me and it was not modified somewhere along the way. You'll learn more about that with Security Plus. But the answer that we were looking for of input voltage is also our super secret code word of the month. Again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, fill in that form in the body of the message on a line by itself, put this super secret code word of input voltage. That's what will earn you a 1-hour webinar category continuing education unit credit. We have time for some more questions, so let's do another one. The next question on our list is here. A company pays a flat fee for cloud storage. Which of the following would best describe this cloud characteristic? Is that rapid elasticity, internal cloud, high availability, file synchronization, or non-metered? A company pays a flat fee for cloud storage. Which of the following would best describe this cloud characteristic? Is it rapid elasticity, internal cloud, high availability, file synchronization, or non-metered? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out what the right answer might be by stepping through each one of these and seeing if you think you know what the answers happen to be. This should be a pretty good one as you're stepping through. I know that if I'm someone who is working through these cloud characteristics, there's quite a few. So every single one of them on this page comes directly from the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those objectives as well. That's one of the most things you want to do. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Here's the link. And lock in your answer. Best way to do it. I think if you're someone who is very new to the cloud space, it's vast, as you would think a cloud would be. There are a lot of different characteristics that you have to take into account. And of course, on the CompTIA A+ exam, you need to know these characteristics. So make sure you're familiar with those. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Not quite as fast as the others, but I think we're getting there to see what this happens to be. We'll have to break through what all of these might be. I think this would be, if you're ever in a case where you're working with a cloud technology, you need to, of course, make sure you're familiar with this as well. See if you know what it is. Let's see how you answered this one. The question asked, a company pays a flat fee for cloud storage. Which of the following would best describe this cloud characteristic? Is it rapid elasticity, internal cloud, high availability, file synchronization, or non-metered? So let's see how we do with this one. What did you answer? 75% of you say it would be non-metered, and then everything else single digits. 8% say internal cloud, 7% said high availability, and 7% said file synchronization, for effectively a three-way tie for second place, leaving us at 4% in third place for rapid elasticity, what we would use for this one. So if you're ever in the case where you're trying to work through all of these different questions and things we have coming through, this is probably a pretty good representation of really how to understand the cloud and knowing what you need to know about the cloud. When you get into paying for cloud services, this can be pretty important to know, because some cloud services are pay as you go, which means if you don't use the cloud service a lot, you don't have to pay very much. Other services, though, expect you to send exactly the same amount of money to them every month, which is this question where you pay a flat fee for cloud storage. So if you're someone who has Google Drive, you use Dropbox, you use Box.com, those very generally are services where you pay a flat fee every month. You pay $20 a month, you pay $50 a month for the different tiers, depending on the service that you're using. You can upload as much as you would like during that month. You can download as much as you would like during that month. And you can usually upload quite a bit and download quite a bit. Whether you upload 1 file a month or 1,000 files a month, it's exactly the same cost. It is a fixed cost every month. That certainly helps with budgeting. And we refer to that as a non-metered service, where there's no additional cost for doing all of those different pieces. The cloud services, the non-metered cloud services, are indeed a flat fee. That's what we were looking for. So non-metered, answer E is indeed the correct answer, and 75% of you were spot on with that answer. You've got 7% say file synchronization. In this case, a flat fee has nothing to do with synchronizing files, so that's not what we're looking for. We've got 6% that say high availability. That's high availability is not a flat fee. That's having the ability to have multiple locations or multiple components to keep systems up and running. We've got internal cloud would not be the case. That would be cloud services that are inside of your network that someone outside of your organization would not have access to. You've got rapid elasticity, which allow us to grow and decrease the amount of capacity that we have, most times automatically. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for a flat fee. And the flat fee answer here is indeed non-metered. That's the one we were looking for. And indeed, 75% of you got that one absolutely correct. We got time for another one. Let's fit one more question in here to make this happen. This is the next question on our list, a troubleshooting question that asks, a desktop monitor shows information only on the right side of the display while the left side remains black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Another monitor question, 2 in 1 study group. How about that? The possible reasons, the most likely reason for this issue would be one of these options: a backlight failure, an incorrect input, burn-in, dead pixels, or a faulty video cable. A desktop monitor shows information only on the right side of the display while the left side remains black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it backlight failure, incorrect input, burn-in, dead pixels, or a faulty video cable? If you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. What do you think the answer happens to be? See if you happen to know what these are. I think this should be pretty good to step through. See if you happen to know what these are. These are, you really do have to step through each one of these. As much as the chat room wants to say it's a trick question, not a trick question. Very straightforward. But you have to step through, and this question is a very good example of troubleshooting questions on your exam, is they ask you the most likely reason. It's entirely feasible that there might be 2 or more answers here that could possibly be feasible, but that wasn't the question. The question asks the most likely reason for this question. And if you think you know what it is, you can lock it in at professormesser.com/QA, and we're going to find out in a moment if you're right. We'll go with any of these to figure out what this might be. There is, of course, a troubleshooting flowchart in my videos. It's based on the troubleshooting steps that are in the A+ exam series. It's a pretty good one, and working through it. See if you happen to be familiar with those. It can help you with questions like this because you step through the troubleshooting process and it sort of leads you down the correct path. And you really are focusing on problems, drilling down into the root cause and solving the problem much faster when you follow that troubleshooting steps. It's very valuable. It's a set of steps you'll use your entire career. Let's see how you answered this one. The question again asked, a desktop monitor shows information on only the right side of the display while the left side remains black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a backlight failure, incorrect input, burn-in, dead pixels, or a faulty video cable? And if we look at the results, we don't know. We're a little bit torn over this one. So this is the one where, let's step through all of these. We have sort of a tie for first place. 35% of you say backlight failure. 32% of you say a faulty video cable. 20% say dead pixels. 11% say incorrect input. And lastly, 3% of you say burn-in. That is a set of answers here that we really do have to think about the way video works in our systems and how it goes through the process of showing us information on our screen. So, of course, there are a lot of different things that you can look at. For example, if you were to look at a system and you were getting a brightness problem, or maybe it was difficult to see the screen, it was dim, and we would like to have it brighter, we would choose something like the video settings. We change the brightness, we change the contrast. Most monitors allow you to set brightness and contrast either through controls that are on the monitor or through controls that are built into your operating system. We've also got options here for, speaking of the operating system, you can change it to set when it would go into sleep mode, change the screensaver, modify the way the video is displayed, change the brightness and contrast directly from your operating system. Or in the case of a monitor where part of the monitor is working, but part of the monitor is not working, probably a backlight failure. You probably have a case if you were to take the monitor screen off and look at the backlights that are in your monitor, there's probably a relatively large matrix of lights behind it. It's not just one light that's shining through. It's usually an entire matrix of lights that are in the back, and it will turn on and turn off different lights depending on what you have on your screen at that particular time. So if we had maybe part of those lights suddenly fail, then it's very possible that that section of the backlight matrix LEDs is no longer operating. It's having a problem. And indeed, a backlight failure is the answer we were looking for. 35% of you did choose backlight failure. That's exactly what we're seeing here, where the right side is working fine, the left side not working at all. Now, of course, we had a lot of other folks said, 32% of you said a faulty video cable. And if we were working with a type of video display that was perhaps analog, and it was analog in a way that it would send only half the signal to a monitor at a particular time, then that could possibly be a correct answer. However, no video technology that we use in our computers works that way. So you would never run into a case where a bad cable would cause half of the display to be shown and half the display not. In fact, the only analog video that you're probably using these days would be VGA. If you've ever had VGA pins that were missing or that were bent and were not properly inserted, the best you might see on your screen is there would be different colors. Maybe the entire screen has a green hue or a blue hue, but it would not have half the screen working and half the screen not working. All right, what if it's digital? What if it's HDMI, DisplayPort, Thunderbolt? What if it's a bad cable there? Well, those are digital systems. And of course, with digital, you either see the video or you don't see the video. If you've ever had a bad video cable on a digital type of signal, you know that you get a lot of blockiness. You get times where you have what really turns out to be dropout, where some of the screen turns into blocks, other parts of the screen don't. But there isn't a case where half the screen is black and half the screen is working fine. That would not be indicative of a faulty video cable, regardless of the video technology that you happen to be using. So we can rule out E as being a valid answer. We have 19% of you say dead pixels. Technically, not wrong. Technically could be correct. But now where normally a dead pixel is maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 pixels on your display might be dead and therefore display black, it would be remarkably unusual for half of the pixels to suddenly be dead pixels. That's not a dead pixel, that's a faulty display. Dead pixels are usually 1, 2, or 3 individual dots on your screen that end up bothering you when you're trying to look at images or play video. Normally, the manufacturer of the display will tell you, we will accept a return if there is 1 dead pixel or 2 dead pixels or 3 dead pixels. But you do not generally consider half of a screen not working to be indicative of dead pixels. 19% of you chose that one, but that would not be a very likely reason. That's probably the least likely reason for this issue. Certainly not the most, given the different answers that are available. 10% of you say an incorrect input. We talked about this earlier. The incorrect input would be one where we have plugged in with DisplayPort, but we've told the monitor to take video input from HDMI. That would show an entire screen as black, not show it as half working, half not working. Now, there are some monitors that do, as some people in the chat room are saying, well, what about the monitors that do picture-in-a-picture? That would be good, but they don't usually set half the screen working with video and the other half not. There probably is a monitor out there that does that somewhere. That would be a very unusual type of configuration. And again, that's why this question specifically was written, to look for the most likely reason for this issue. There's certainly many more monitors that do not have that feature than those that do, assuming that feature even exists somewhere. And then lastly, burn-in. Burn-in is what you would see if, for those of you that were sitting in airports a lot over this holiday season, you probably saw on the displays that were in the airport, there's always burn-in, because those always have the same graphics, the same messages, the same text on the screen all the time. And so burn-in, not the correct answer, and only 3% really thought this is what you have to deal with. This is a relatively straightforward question. This is not a trick question. I don't consider this to be tricky at all. You know, I have a big problem with questions that try to fool you. This is probably one of the most straightforward video troubleshooting questions you would get. because there's only one answer that's the very clear answer here. All of the other answers aren't even close, but it requires you to have a very good understanding of how video works. And I think as you go through the exam objectives, I know they list out that you need to know DisplayPort, you need to know HDMI, you need to know VGA, but you need to get deeper into them as well. And so having an understanding of the way monitors work and having an understanding of how the video display shows us information on the screen is incredibly important, especially when you get questions like this. They're going to ask you to troubleshoot those particular cases. That's where you really run into problems. Well, we've kind of hit the top of the hour, but I think we can do one more question. I have a question here that comes directly from my practice exams book. If you've never seen my practice exams book before, it is a set of 3 separate 90-question practice exams with 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice-based questions in each of those. So a lot of good information is in my practice exams. For the 1101, it's 389 pages. We've got all kinds of questions inside of them. Let's step through what one of these questions might look like, and you'll get a feel for how this book works. I have a PDF version of the book right here. There's also, of course, physical versions of the book that you can get. It's a thick book, almost 400 pages worth. But all of those questions and answers are in here. Of course, the questions you saw today are not in the book. I never put the book questions in my study groups. In fact, it's sort of a different style. The book is written to emulate or have the same type of voice as the questions you might get on your exam. And here's a good example of that. Question A17 asks, a firewall is configured to block email transfers from a remote server. Which of the following ports is the firewall blocking? See if you know what this is. Another port question. Is it 443, 22, 23, or 25? Now, if you're using a PDF reader like I am, you can even use some type of annotation. I can set colors on the things that I am using. So I'll set a color of green. If I think the answer is 443, I can mark it on here. I could draw on here if I have it set up in some type of other device. It's a nifty way to manage what's on these. Of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I appreciate that. Whenever you're looking at the question, though, you'll notice that I have a quick answer on page 31. So you can flip over to page 31 and just see, is it A, B, C, or D? I also have a details page on page 52. Now, you could just scroll through the PDF or flip over to that page, but I've also got these set up as links. If you click the details, we'll click the link on the details, and it takes you over to that page that tells you firewalls configured, and it gives you the question again, and then tells you the answer, and in this case, the answer is D, 25. And it tells you why that's the right answer. Now, if you're like me and you take one of these exams, you never get every question right. In fact, I rarely get the questions right the first time through. So what I've done is when you get a question wrong, I've documented every single incorrect answer, and I've not only told you which ones are incorrect, I've explained why they are incorrect. So for instance, 443 is commonly used by SSL or TLS. 22 is often used by Secure Shell. 23 is used by Telnet. So now we understand more about why we got this question wrong. I would also encourage you, if you do get the practice exams book and you get the question right, I would highly recommend you read through the incorrect answers anyway, because some of the information in the incorrect answers might help you if you get a question about that technology on your actual exam. And lastly, at the very bottom, if you don't even understand port numbers or what in the world I'm talking about on this question, I have not only links to the video, but I've also got a QR code. If you've got a mobile phone, you can put that up and it takes you directly to the video so that you can also find out more information about where this question came from. What do these technologies mean? What are port numbers? How would I use these? It's there on the common network ports. And then I can use the back button in my PDF reader to go back to where we started, and then I can go to the next question that's in my book. That is all in my practice exams book. That might be something that can help you. Also, if you purchase the practice exams and the course notes at the same time, there's a bit of a discount. So you may want to consider getting both of those in one fell swoop. There's also links on my site where you can get both the physical and the digital versions. When you buy the physical version, you get the digital version for free. So that might help you while you're waiting to receive this in the mail. You'll have the digital version that you can start reading immediately. Find that on my website. Find it at professormesser.com/core1pe. As I've been mentioning, this entire study group, all the good stuff is in the objectives. And the objectives are free. You should download these from the CompTIA website so that you know you have the latest version of these. Go to professormesser.com/objectives to make sure that you have the right set of objectives. The 220-1101 is the one specific to what we are studying today. That is the latest exam objectives, and that's the one you should absolutely have if you're starting your studies. Amazing amount of detail in here, an incredibly important thing to have. Make sure you download those and use them all the way through the studies. This also will tell you if you're ready to take your exam, because you can use this as a checklist before you walk into the exam room. I want to let you know that we do another one of these study groups 2 days from now on Thursday. This is Tuesday as we are sitting here today. On the 5th of January, we have another study group. And then next month in February, we have A+ study groups on the 7th and the 9th. This month in January, we also have Network Plus study groups and Security Plus study groups. They're all on my calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. You'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. We're really way in overtime right now, but we've got a lot more to do. I've got the end of my questions, but now I'd like to take your questions. Stick around right after this for our after show, while I'll be taking questions from the chat room. Again, don't forget about my discounted vouchers. They're available at professormesser.com/vouchers, and each one comes with a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. Get you just a few more points on your exam. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams. They're also on my website. Follow the links at the top of the screen. And of course, if you like this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. That helps me quite a bit when I'm talking with my friends over at YouTube. There's a lot of things we're working on that side. They look at those statistics to see if this is something that you think is valuable to use for your studies, and it helps me get more information from the YouTube folks and participate in some of the things that they are working on specifically around educational features that they're starting to roll out. So I would not be able to do that without your support. Thank you so much for subscribing and hitting thumbs up on these videos. It's a great thing to have. We've got a lot more to go through. We would love you to stick around for our after show. Plenty more to step through. Thank you for being here in this first hour. We'll talk about a lot more on the other side. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay. Now, let's see. I need to do a couple of things before I start taking questions from the chat room. I turned on all of these lights, but did I turn on any type of air conditioning? No, I did not. Am I regretting that right now? Yes, I am. So we'll get that turned on and cool things down just a bit. While we're waiting for that to kick in, I will remind you that I would love to take your questions from the chat room. You can go to professormesser.com/live, or if you're on YouTube right now, it's the YouTube chat. It's the same chat in both places. I'm simply watching the things go through, and I'm able to answer some of the questions that you have available. We've got a lot that were flying by. I wasn't able to see everything, but hopefully you are familiar with these. We'll start with a number of questions that are popping up in here. I've got a number here. Vandria says, I'm not familiar with CEUs. They stand for Continuing Education Units. I received one from you before. Do they expire? Are CEUs used for cert renewals only? From CompTIA's perspective, a CEU is a credit that you can use towards renewing an existing certification. So if you have an A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or some of the others, the certifications, one of the many different ways to renew your certification is by using CEUs. So some people collect them for that. Sometimes there will be a third-party certification or process that require you to earn continuing education type of credits. And some people will use these CEUs for that purposes. I've had people earn the CEUs because their bosses like them to turn them in every month or so. And that's another good reason to use CEUs. So those would be the reasons. And I think that's a a very good and important thing to consider if you're not using CEUs to renew your certification, or you've not yet earned a certification, then these CEUs are really no good to you. They don't provide you with anything other than to get an email from me. And if that's something you'd like, I'll send you the email. I'm fine with that too. No problem to be able to make that happen. How often are these live study groups? Well, of course, if you want to do a live study group, we do them live every month. We also, of course, have all of the replays on our website, so you can go back through and watch all of our previous study groups as well. And one of the things, projects I'm doing right now is updating and making a study group page so you can easily find those. It's not the easiest thing to find on YouTube or on my website right now. We're going to fix that and make it even easier for you to use. Other questions: does Thunderbolt V3 only travel via USB-C? That is correct. USB-C is the preferred and kind of the standardized interface, physical interface for Thunderbolt V3. Of course, many different signals can run over USB-C because USB-C is a type of interface. It's the hardware connection. But inside of that connection, we could send USB signals. We could send Thunderbolt signals. We could send DisplayPort signals. We could send HDMI signals over USB-C. It supports many different types of signals, and you really have to look at the documentation for the USB-C interface in your device to see what is supported, because not every USB-C interface supports the same technologies. That makes it challenging. So if you're a technician, you're an administrator, and you tell somebody, oh, we can plug in a monitor via USB-C. If you have USB-C on your connection, we'll plug in the monitor, and you plug it in and nothing happens. It may be that the USB-C connection you're plugging into doesn't support that type of video signal. So it doesn't always work the way you might expect. But as far as Thunderbolt V3 is concerned, Thunderbolt V3 almost exclusively uses USB-C as the preferred hardware interface for Thunderbolt, yes. It would be, in fact, I don't think I've seen it, probably as part of the standard, but I've not even seen Thunderbolt version 3 run over other interfaces yet. There probably is something in the standard that supports that, but I'd have to read through the standard to know for sure. The vast majority of what you'll find is USB-C, though. I think it may actually be in the standard. Other questions, other things that came through. Johnny asks, am I allowed to go back to the questions I skipped on the test? And the CompTIA exam is a linear exam. This is different. If you have ever taken a Cisco exam, for example, a number of the Cisco exams are adaptive exams, which means that the next question you get on the exam is often based on what you previously answered correctly or incorrectly on the exam. It also means that if you go to the next question on a Cisco exam, that you can't back up. You can't then change something that you previously did. Once you lock in the answer, you're done and you move forward. But the CompTIA exams are linear, which means the entire exam is laid out in front of you when you start the exam. If you wanted to, when the exam starts, you could jump all the way to the end and go backwards if you wanted to. You could jump around to any question randomly. So you have the ability to flag questions, pass on them, and then later on go back to those flagged questions to be able to answer some of the things that are on there, which to me makes for a very nice study method. In fact, you'll find that some of the questions you get later in the exam may help you answer a question you got earlier in the exam. So you'll find yourself hitting the back button to find that question again so that you can answer it now that the question has kind of been answered for you, or at least jogged your memory for technologies that are on the exam. So another good strategy, and that's in my Exam Hacks ebook as well. Other questions from TC says, is a college degree necessary for obtaining an IT job with an A+ cert? How much more difficult will it be to obtain a job without one? This is sort of a loaded question because there's no right or wrong answer here. If you read through or you watch my video, it's a 30-minute video. I know it's a long video, but it is all content. It is chock full of information. And it's on the YouTube video description of this video. And it's the video entitled, How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. That video steps through 4 different elements that set you up for the best possible outcome. The spoiler are the first element is a formal education. So something like a college degree. The second element would be industry certifications like A+, Network+, Security+. The third type of element we're looking for is some type of practical experience. This may not necessarily be professional experience where you're paid, but it's some type of experience that you can bring to the table and describe to someone else. And lastly, the fourth element when looking for a job in IT with no experience is you know someone who already works there. And I talk about the advantages, disadvantages, and ways to optimize those in that video. And you'll find that not every employer is looking for all four of those elements. You may find an employer that doesn't care that you don't have a college degree, but they do care that you have an A+, because they know they can pay you a little less and then teach you as you go. Or they may be looking for someone right out of the gate to have the knowledge they need and the professional background they need, so they might only hire people with a college degree. It depends on the employer. You just never know. You have to ask the employer or look at the job description to know exactly what they're looking for. But don't let any one of those elements keep you from sending your resume in or an application for a particular job. Even if the job description says must have, and then they list the things you must have, but you don't have one of those, don't worry about it. Just send it in anyway. You should not be the one denying yourself the job. Let them tell you no. Just most of us, if you're a guy, you're used to rejection anyway. So just send your resume in and they'll reject it. You're like, I knew they were going to reject it because I didn't have that one thing. Or they might say, we know you don't have this one thing, but you do have these others. And given the resumes we've gotten in, we think yours is one we should probably talk about some more. So you never know what's in the mind of the employer. And very often the people hiring for the job may be different than the people that write the job description. It happens all the time. So that's what I would recommend, is absolutely put everything on your resume. Find the jobs you think you are fit for, the ones you think you qualify for, the ones you're comfortable with. Send those jobs in. Send those resumes in. Send those applications in. And see how you do with that one. Am I correct in saying the A+ exam was updated late last year? Is the current study guide material up to date with the latest version of the exam? Yes, the A+ exam was updated in April of last year. And yes, all of the exam materials on my website are always updated to the latest version of the CompTIA exams. The ones you're looking for A+ are exam materials that are specifically written for the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. If your exam materials are not for those two, throw them out and get the latest ones for the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Very, very, very important that you study from the right materials. Make sure you make that happen. Other questions. Let's see what else might be on here. Fair enough. So let's say when you're getting your initial job in IT that you don't have a formal education, you don't have a college degree, you've got a lot of experience, and you've got some knowledge in some of the A+, Network+, Security+ certifications. But if you want to move up in an organization and get a management role, it may be that the organization requires you as a manager to have a college degree. So you may find positions like that. That's very common. Just keep that in mind. I think these days, though, given how much money you can make as a technical person in IT, easily make six figures in IT with a foundational knowledge in operating systems, networking, security, and other technologies, you can make six figures. You can often make more than the managers make by being a technical person, a technologist in IT. So you may find that a college degree may or may not be as valuable as you think it might be. So good idea to look at what your particular organization is looking for. And it may be that you have no interest in going into management. That's not a bad deal, quite honestly. I love the technical side of things. I have worked as a manager in IT, both as a director level, an SE manager, and other management positions within IT. It just wasn't my thing. I probably wasn't very good at it either when it came right down to it. I love the technical side. I like getting at the command line. I like working on the UI. I like making things happen, and I like solving problems. You don't tend to do that as a manager. The only problems you're solving are ones dealing with more babysitting issues, and I'm not a very good babysitter, apparently. I'm hoping it wasn't too bad for the people that were my employees, but it just didn't click with me. And after a while, I realized I want to be in the trenches. I want to solve the problems. And so I just stuck with technology, and it has worked out so well so far. We're gonna go with that. Other questions from the chat. We're gonna scroll through a little bit and find out what other questions might come through. This is a very common question I get, which is, how old is too old to become Network Plus certified, or A Plus certified, or just certified? How old is too old? Obviously, there's no age limit to earn the certification. So, but I don't think that's what you were asking. You weren't asking how old do you age out of the cert. You don't, thankfully. For us old people, we do not age out of the cert, so that's good. The part that I think is important, though, is that the way you are perceived by your employer might depend on your age. It might change based on your age, because it turns out that ageism is sort of a thing. That means that by the time you get into the later stages of your career, you probably want to be really focusing on very complex or relatively involved types of technologies, because you want to build up your technical skills through the years. And then finally, you're up at a level where you're solving problems that are very complex and deal with a lot of different systems simultaneously, but you already have the knowledge in all of those systems. So in fact, however, a number of people that may be working in one type of industry today may be looking to change jobs into IT. So you're effectively sort of moving from one type of knowledge to another. You're sort of starting at the bottom again with your technology. In those cases, I would highly recommend that you look at that last element that I mentioned in my video, which is someone who works there. Ideally, once you get into that part of your career, you've made some connections with other people in your organizations. You've made connections with other people that are working through types of problems and challenges. So I would highly recommend that if you are someone, I don't know, looking at a career in this, that you use all of those connections that you've built through the years. Incredibly important. I'm noticing the cache on my system is getting larger and larger, which means that my connection is not as stable as it should be. The cache is getting smaller now, so I'm thinking we're back. But for a moment there, you may have lost us. Now we're back. We're fine, everybody. And it's going up and down, I'm noticing. So we're going to see how this works out. And if it's really bad on the online side of things, I will absolutely find a way to upload and have at least the parts of this that you want to work through, have the replay of this updated so that you're able to get everything. So a number of people are even mentioning, hey, the stream is going back and forth and lagging. It is. So it does appear to have a bit of a problem with the connections we have. How about we do some quick troubleshooting, everybody? We'll skip this version at the moment. Let's do some troubleshooting since we're here. I'm going to bring up my screen, and we'll do some troubleshooting to see if we can figure out how our network connection is and see if the problem is on our side. Well, if you look, I just brought up an MTR, and you can see on the MTR that we've got 0 packet loss. Everything seems to be working properly now. I see my cache numbers are back where they should be. In fact, you can kind of look over my shoulder a bit. This cache number of 3% is where we should be. That means everything's working normally. But see in the past how it dipped down? That meant the network was not so great. So by the time we got around to checking the network, everything was fixed. It's the beauty of technology. By the time you look at it, you're pretty much solving the problem right there. So that's not exactly the best way to go there. But there's no weather problems here. It's simply network problems. It's the normal internet connectivity. There's nothing you can do when it starts doing that. Let's take some more questions from the chat room. If you have a question about technology or a question about anything, I'm more than happy to answer questions you might have. Go to professormesser.com/live to lock in your question in the chat room. And I'll take questions. If you're on YouTube, you can also put them into the YouTube chat. It's the same chat that I created so that we're able to get into these questions and make that happen. Yeah, we never know how things are going to go with internet connectivity. During the day, sometimes it's very solid, sometimes it isn't. Fortunately, right now, things are okay. So we're going to keep going and just hope for the best as we step through here. We just never know what may be happening there. Important questions coming from Malk. Hey, how's the FUDGE? We need to go to the FUDGE side. Uncle Phil's FUDGE, a longtime supporter for, in fact, his entire life. He has been a supporter of what we do. It's my brother, Uncle Phil, who has Phil's at Uncle Phil's FUDGE. It's going great. He brought some over on the holidays. Of course, new stuff he's working on, stuff that's not available on the website. So we tried some different flavors. It's so much fun to go through there. He really just has a knack for making all of that happen. And if you head over to UnclePhil'sFudge.com, if you're someone who loves fudge or you'd like to give fudge to somebody, we're coming up in February is Valentine's Day. Go to Uncle Phil's Fudge. There's my promotion for my brother, Uncle Phil, the uncle of my children. So literally Uncle Phil's Fudge. He's your uncle too. Why not? He's everybody's uncle. We'll make that happen. And that's a great place to go. He's got some great fudges. Not only does he have traditional fudge, but if you're vegan, he has vegan fudge. Exceptional. I had some fantastic stuff, and you don't often see that. It's not common, but he is very particular about his fudges, the flavors and how they work out, and I'm pretty impressed that he was able to make that happen. Other questions. How long do you have between Core 1 to do Core 2? Core 1 and Core 2 are the two A+ exams. The two 2011-01 and the two 2011-02 are the Core 1 and Core 2 exams, respectively. At least that's the versions that are out right now. Those two exam types can be taken in any order. So you could take Core 2 first and then take Core 1. Or you could take Core 1 and then take Core 2. It's up to you. Take whichever one. There is no time frame between that is required. So you could take one of those now, and you could wait until October of 2025 to take the next one. And as soon as you pass the second exam, you're A+ certified. But you're not A+ certified until you take that second exam. Another important part of this is that you very much have to make sure that the exams themselves are taken in the same versions. So the 1101, 1102. So it's important. I see that our internet has dropped completely out at this point. The cache is down. I see it's just dropping like a rock. For those of you watching, you probably have to watch this on the replay. I'm probably going to have to throw out the whole thing and put the replay up. But you can see 15%. That means there's no good network. Let's bring up our network connection. Do I still have it here? Let's do a sudo mtr to quad 9. And of course, I need my password. On my side, I'm seeing very good response times. No, there is some dropping over on quad 9. That's a quad 9 network. So that's very bold. I am seeing some drops here locally. You can't see them on your side. So let me bring this up on your screen so you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So there are some links locally that do have some packet loss. It's just as we suspected. Now our cache is going back up. But indeed, we have identified, not on my local network, but on a hop that 1, 2, 3, 4 hops away on the Comcast network, we indeed are having or had some packet loss, temporary packet loss, but packet loss nonetheless. Not what we really want to run into when you're doing a live stream, but it's a live stream. What are you going to do? That's just the way it works. Can't really get away from that. So just refresh, and we hope for the most. We hope for the best as we go through here. Good question. What advice can you give women in this industry? I have a number of different, I guess, things that I can focus on. One of the important things about technology, and one of the great things about technology, is that the technology itself is uncaring as to your gender, doesn't care about your race, doesn't care about your age. It's a computer. And as long as you know what to type in at the keyboard, you can make things happen. To me, it's one of the beautiful things about IT, computer science, technology in general, is that it is completely oblivious to who is doing the typing. That's the good part about this. The problem, of course, is humans don't work that way. Humans are very different. And generally speaking, technology itself tends to have a slant towards male, towards the male gender. But there's really no good reason for that. I have worked with exceptional technologists who are male. I've worked with exceptional technologists who are female. So it really doesn't matter which one of those it is. I would say that as long as you approach the industry that way, I think regardless of your gender, I think the technology will treat you nicely back. Now, one of the things that's sort of an advantage for us in the United States is there, and other places around the world, there's a lot of laws that can also protect you regardless of your gender, your religion, your ethnicity. A lot of different things can protect you. And so I think a lot of employers have realized that too. There are a lot of employers that want to encourage people into technology regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity. They just want people of all types. But as I've worked through technology, I used to work with people and continue to work with people in technology from all different parts of the world, from all different backgrounds, from all different places. It doesn't seem to matter. Technology is technology, and if you're good at it, you're good at it. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter any of the other pieces. Just find an organization that matches your own perspective of how people should be treated, and you will be just fine. Unfortunately, not all organizations have that level of importance associated with that. Just find one that does. I've worked with horrible places before. It seemed okay when I started. There were red flags before I went in. I didn't pay any attention. It turned out to be a bad place to work, but not because I was male or because I was female or because I was white or because I was black or because I was anything else. It was because it was a bad place to work. So find the place that fits your way of working. There's a lot of great places out there that do that, regardless of who you are, what you are, why you are, where you are, anything else. And I've worked with a lot of great technical people, and I don't care. Can we fix the problem together? Can you help me learn about the things that I'm doing? Can we work well together as professionals? Then it's fine. I got no problem with that. That's the way it should work. Why do you hate fax machines so much in that one video? Jason, everybody, has never worked with fax machines before, or he wouldn't ask the question. Fax technology seems like it's one that would be able to be integrated very well into our networks today. But it seems that companies that create connectivity between the fax machine world and our modern networks are tenuous at best. They are somewhat clunky, generally speaking. There's not a lot of great implementations of fax to PDF, for example, which is generally how people will do that. I have managed large banks of fax cards, fax adapters that are plugged into POTS lines, the plain old telephone system, where instead of a fax machine, you're plugging in an adapter card and plugging in an interface, sometimes multiple interfaces. Those pick up, they bring in the fax as a digital copy, but then how do you get this digital thing sent to the right person on your network? And how is it sent to them? Is it in their email? Is it a Dropbox? Everybody does it differently. But how does it determine where that goes? Is it determined based on who's calling? Is it determined based on an OCR, an optical character recognition? There's so many places this goes wrong. If this just the description of this seems like it is very complex and very difficult to manage, you would be correct. And that's why most people who have to manage the fax machine process in their organization would rather just feel good to be a gangster and just take everything out back with a baseball bat and do away with it. It's sort of remarkable that's a technology that still exists, quite honestly, given how much power we have in our mobile phones, how much power we have on our tablets. But medical and legal still keep the fax industry going, and so it does. That is the way I think if you ever get into dealing with fax machines, you'll understand very quickly why it's just so painful to be able to work through. So that's why. That's why I give it sort of a bit of a disdain. That's why I speak very poorly of integrating faxes, because it's so difficult to do. There's some good systems out there. Most are not, it seems. Everybody has a bad story about their fax machines. One of the problems is that you're talking about medical, just what I just said, medical and legal is keeping fax machines running, it seems. Medical and legal. So try to get someone in medicine or someone in law to change what they're currently doing. That's not going to happen. So faxes are going to be here for a while. We're going to have to deal with facsimile and deal with that. We'll just have to see and figure out if somebody actually is able to do it right for there. Vandria says, I'm from the Bahamas. Can I get exam vouchers from you? I'm asking, I know you mentioned Canada and America being eligible. Unfortunately, the vouchers on my site are only good for the United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, and sort of the other islands within the U.S. territories. So other than that, you can't use those vouchers anywhere else. You would have to be in one of those countries to be able to purchase and use those vouchers. The Bahamas, you've got your own currency, and unfortunately, the way that international currency laws are set up makes it extremely complex to be able to set up some type of payment relationship. You can see it's just a problem. I've already gone down this road and trying to find a good solution for this, and it is a bit of a challenge. Same thing applies for Nelson's question regarding UK citizens. I just don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a good solution for you currently. I keep looking around to try to find something that'll work. My best option now is find a partner in your particular country who might offer discounted vouchers, or you'd have to buy the vouchers directly on the CompTIA website. Not a great answer, not the best answer anyway, but that's all I got. Sorry about that. So sort of how it works. Other questions. Let's see. This is either a great question or a bad question. The question from Blessed One says, up to how many CompTIA exam attempts would you do before letting go? That sounds very, very dark. That's not a great approach to exam taking. However, I guess it depends on how important these certifications are to you, or how important they are towards a prospective employer. I probably would never stop. Just keep attempting the exams. Fortunately, the exam objectives are a very good checklist. If you know everything in the exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. That's a very bold thing to say, but it really is true. If you're able to check off and explain to somebody every bullet that's in the exam objectives, you're not going to have any problem getting a passing score on your exam. So I think that's the way to do it, and being able to really understand, is this the right certification for me, is to really go back to the exam objectives. Often people will come to my website and say, I didn't pass today. And on my exam, they asked me some question about DisplayPort. What is that? And I have to always mention, well, did you get a copy of the objectives? And they go, no, what are the objectives? I'm like, oh, that would have helped you. That would have given you knowledge of what could be presented to you while you're sitting in this exam. So I think everybody can pass the A+ exam. And sometimes it does take you more than once or twice. There have been people on my site that have taken it 4 and 5 times before they were able to pass. And I realize at that point, it's almost not worth it. Like, oh, I got to take this exam again. But if you have the objectives and you have some good study materials and you have people that you can study with, and you've been out to our Discord channel where almost every night somebody is in a voice channel and they're talking about questions and things from the exam case. And I see this all the time where somebody says, I want to take this exam and I want this exam I need to take it in a month. And they sort of set a date on when they want the exam to be taken. And unfortunately, that doesn't work so well if you're somebody who is really trying to break out and see where can I really know the objectives? How have I stepped through all of the objectives and know them? You're sort of putting the cart before the horse. You shouldn't be setting a time frame to take the exam. You should be going through the entire exam objectives and then deciding, okay, now I'm ready. Setting the times that way would not be great. Again, with the internet problems today, sorry chat room, sorry everybody, but the internet problems are such a pain for us today. You can see we had a different router showing packet loss this time. Great, fantastic. And still, I've noticed that we're now finally creeping back up. So maybe we've recovered from that point. I don't seem to see any more loss on that particular link. So we'll just have to keep going to see what we're able to do with this. I should just keep this running, right? We're going to put this over on this side and we'll just keep the whole thing running. I need to move it. There we go. There we go. Now I can kind of keep track on everything that's there. Yeah, I'm happy to show you how I look at the packet loss. You know, one of the things that I often do when I'm having problems on my local network, and I've used this before, especially when I've had times where my network would just disappear. I was ultimately having router problems, but it's hard to get your provider to really take your outages seriously without some type of documentation. One of the tools that I've often used is called Ping Plotter. It is a great tool. I don't have anything special about Ping Plotter that I could tell you about. It's not, I don't get anything from using this. Let me get a picture of this without me in the way, because I think this is valuable. This is Ping Plotter to Quad 9. And this is effectively the same thing as the MTR that I was doing here, but it's in a plot. I'm sorry that it's so small, but it's going through each of the hops. So there's your trace route, and then it maps out for you how the pings are going. And it gives you an idea of the average, the minimum, the current, and any packet loss that may be associated with that. What's on this link, however, if it goes down, let me move the MTR out of the way. Notice it starts to build a chart, though, of what's been going on. I've got this set to, I think, a 5-second breakdown. So every 5 seconds, I can get the ping response time. This is latency in the white. And then if it goes away, it turns red. So I've often set this up on my network, and I've just let it run for a day. And then I have a documentation of at what times did I lose the internet connection, and then for how long. And then I have timestamps, and I can take that back to my provider and say, yesterday at 3:24, I had an outage that lasted for 37 seconds. Here's the documentation. Here's the screenshots and other information that can help me, all by using this tool, Ping Plotter. I think they have premium versions of this as well. Well, that didn't help very much. There we go. So Ping Plotter, let me bring up the about. For Ping Plotter, there you go. Pingplotter.com. That's where you can go to get that particular utility. The other utility that I was using was MTR, my trace route. That is a command line utility that effectively does the same thing without sort of the historical breakdown inside of it. So we can kind of see what's going on. And I've had even more loss that has occurred. We're back to normal, by the way, with the stream. But some of you were asking about that. That is where that came from on the Ping Plotter. Let's bring back up some of the questions you guys have coming through. Let's see what other things. Oh, this one was pretty good. I want to mention Eric, who said, thank you so much for your training material. Your practice exams were vital to me passing my Security Plus on Friday. Congratulations on your Security Plus. That's why we make the course notes. It's why we make these practice exams. It's fantastic to get these stories that people have of going in and taking and passing these exams. And Eric, congratulations on your new Security Plus, and thank you for letting me know as well. It's always good to hear when people have those success stories and where they come from. Where can you find these exam objectives? Where are these objectives you speak of, sir? They are on the CompTIA website. You can find them a couple of different places. One way that you can always find them is going to professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link on that page that will take you over to CompTIA's website, or go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, take you right there. First link, you'll be able to download the PDF directly from there and find what those are. I apologize for the internet going up and going down and going up and going down and going up and going down, but that's just how those work. That is, I have no control over those pieces, so we'll have to see how things go going forward. Maybe we're out of the woods with the internet problems and breaking some of those down. Other things that we have here. How would you troubleshoot a problem according to the OSI model, layers 1 through 7? In fact, most of the time when we're troubleshooting, the OSI model is kind of in the back of our head, and often we will describe problems in OSI model terms. So, for example, maybe you're having a problem with CRC errors to cross a WAN to a remote site. Well, there's a lot in between. So you've got your equipment, you've got cables, you've got a WAN connection that's probably managed by a third party. So you're paying a provider, usually an internet provider or WAN provider, for that link. You've got cables on the other side. You've got equipment on the other side. Where's the CRC error occurring? Is it in your equipment on this side? Is it in a cable? Is it on the other side? Is it with the WAN provider? This becomes a bit of a troubleshooting problem. So the first thing you might do is contact the provider or look at your local systems and perform your own tests. What if we do a loopback test on our own equipment where we're sending out data, we're looping it back and receiving the data we just sent to be able to see if what we sent matches what we're receiving? Because if it doesn't, there's your CRC error. That shouldn't change. What you send out should be exactly what you receive on a loopback test. So you're able to test that way. Well, then you might want to call your WAN provider and say, could you do a loopback test? And they absolutely can, all the way down to your facility. And they'll loop back and tell you, we ran a loopback test. The loopback test showed either errors or no errors, and you have an idea of where to go from there. So once we finish the loopback test, we may decide, okay, layer 1 is good. Layer 2 is probably pretty good too, because we tested our equipment. So we feel pretty good. Layer 1 and 2 are solid for this. Maybe it's an IP problem. Maybe it's a issue with an application. Maybe it's something else in the OSI stack. Maybe you've determined that we can't get data to that side because of a routing problem. You may call up the router team and say, I think we have a layer 3 problem between here and remote site B. So you can talk in OSI terms very often with other people because they also talk in those terms. Oh, so we've confirmed layers 1 and 2 are good. We ran some loopback tests. We think it might be an issue with the routing table because it happens this way and then it drops out and then it comes back. Maybe it's a routing table problem. That's a layer 3 issue. Let's see if it really is a layer 3 issue. Let's check IP addresses. Let's check subnet masks. Let's check routing tables. So very common to use OSI when troubleshooting along those terms. The model itself is worked very well to be able to understand and talk with other technologists about what we're seeing and how we're seeing it. Because layer 3 in Mac OS is the same as layer 3 in Windows, is the same as layer 3 on the router, is the same as layer 3 with your mobile phone. Those don't change. But if you talk in terms of, I think it's a layer 3 issue, everybody immediately goes to IP, they go to subnet masks, they go to routing tables. So everybody knows what to look at regardless of what their operating system is. For some reason, there are a number of places that say, no, you should be using the TCP/IP model. It's because we're using TCP/IP. We're not using the OSI protocols. And they're right. We are using TCP/IP and we're not using the OSI protocols. But because of the weirdness in the industry, the TCP/IP model never took off. OSI is what we originally used. And so OSI has just stayed all the way through the years. And in fact, it's probably the better of the two. It's a little more descriptive with certain layers. So it just makes sense that that's what we use. In fact, the only time I think you'll ever see the TCP/IP model used is in a classroom. And that's pointless. So why are we even bothering with it at all? In fact, you'll notice in Network Plus, it's not in there anymore. Used to be, or maybe that was the Cisco. Cisco somehow is latched on to the TCP/IP model. They love the TCP/IP model and they won't let it go, except nobody uses it outside the Cisco courses. It's sort of how it works. It's kind of frustrating though, isn't it? To go through that entire process of learning a model that you'll never end up using in the field, but that's the TCP/IP model for you. I understand the logic behind it. It makes sense. That's the one we should be using. Yes, but we don't. So that's just one of the many inconsistencies you will find in the industry of IT. We're more than happy to bring that to you. For the same reason, we still refer to TLS as SSL, even though generally speaking, there's very little SSL out in the world. Everything these days is pretty much TLS. If it isn't, there's a problem because we really should be off of SSL by now. But we still call it SSL. We don't call it TLS. TLS, too hard to say. SSL, rolls off the tongue. Have you checked the SSL cert? I think it might be a problem with SSL. It might be a problem with TLS. Oh, it was hard to say. We're just going to keep calling it SSL. And I think that's why SSL is kind of stuck there and being able to work through all of those challenges. Again, for those of you that just join us, we're taking questions from the chat room, whether you're on professormesser.com/live or on the YouTube. It's the same chat. That's the one I'm looking at. Be more than happy to have a look at what questions you might have about technology, life, the universe, anything else. You're welcome to put it in there. I've been working through a number of technical updates to the studio. For those of you that kind of have watched the studio through the years, we've sort of changed things and updated, but it's basically the same thing it's always been. My next move is I updated my main computing device, which is a Mac Studio Pro. And it supports 3 monitors, but I'm only using 2 of them. That's almost illegal for those of you that have used 3 monitors before. And I could use 3 monitors. Now, in this mode, this monitor over here shows my stream information. That's the one with the cache. Should be at 3%. It is. This other monitor is showing me my video switcher when I'm live or when I'm recording. Great. The monitor directly in front of me is my primary monitor. The monitor to the right, the large one to the right, is my secondary monitor. So it doesn't seem right. So I need to turn this monitor into a 3rd monitor and connect it back to my system. I've got to work on that. So we talk about changing the input settings on a monitor. That's what I'm going to do, is I'm either going to use a different monitor or use this monitor with something like HDMI or a display port, whatever the input is I have. I'm using one of the HDMIs right now for this 4K connection. I need to change this so that it's also plugged in. So I have 3 monitors when I'm not live, because life's too short for 2 monitors, people. We need more. So that's next on my list. We'll have to see how that turns out. I don't know if it will be something that sticks or not, but I think it would be useful for me to have on that. Now, this question, I think, is referring to the A+ certification. You know, would Windows 11 be included as of right now? This would be a good question to ask around the exam objectives. This is a perfect reason to have the exam objectives. So did I bring up my objectives? I did not. Let's bring up the objectives. I've talked about them all this time, and I really have not shown you the objectives. Let's go all the way to the top of these. This is the CompTIA exam objectives. So I've downloaded the PDF. This is them right there. They'll tell you about the exam. Let's get a little bigger so we can see what's going on here. About the exam, there it tells you the percentages, and then it goes directly into these are the objectives. So for section 1.0 mobile devices, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. The first bullet is hardware/device replacement, which would be battery, keyboard/keys, random access memory, RAM, hard disk drive, HDD, solid state drive, SSD, migration, HDD SSD replacement, wireless cards. And then you have another bullet for physical privacy and security components, biometrics, and near-field scanner features. These are your checkboxes. So if you can explain to somebody how and when you would replace a battery, you can check that one off your list. If you can explain to somebody how you would repair or replace keyboards or keys, to take that one off your list. So you just go through this entire list until you've really covered every single bullet that's in these exam objectives. And as I scroll through, you'll see there's a lot of bullets. There's all the port numbers. Those of you who are saying, are port numbers for something else? No, they're for this. They're absolutely for, there's a lot of port numbers in A+. The wireless, networked host, SOHO, small office, home office, they're all here. So we're not even on the network. Finally, into hardware. Here's the hardware section. So all the hardware bullets, there's a lot there. This is long. Keeping going. Printers, Section 4, virtualization and cloud computing, which thankfully is not very long. And then Section 5, hardware and network troubleshooting. Those, now we're finally getting, come on, there we go. And we're at the end of the bullets. So all of that, those are all of our bullets. That's a lot of bullets, by the way. All of those are the exam objectives. So that's what you have to go in to be able to determine if Windows 11 is included in that right now. And indeed, Windows 11 is included in that right now. Windows 11 is in the 220.11.02 or Core 2 exam objectives. It would not be in the Core 1. But I highly recommend looking at that. Both Windows 10 and Windows 11 are in that. And they have a section in the exam objectives. Let me bring that up for the Core 2, because I think that would be valuable to look at. In the Core 2 objectives, at the very beginning of the exam objectives, there is a piece of information, go all the way to the top, about this exam. Put it right there. These are the Core 2 objectives, and they tell you, note on Windows 11. Versions of Microsoft Windows that are not end of mainstream support is determined by Microsoft up to and including Windows 11 are intended content areas of the certification. As such, objectives in which a specific version of Microsoft Windows is not indicated in the main objective title can include content related to Windows 10 and Windows 11 as it relates to the job role. That means as you go through these objectives, there will be a section that talks about Windows. But if it's talking about Windows 10 editions, Home, Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise, that means only Windows 10 is what you need to know. If you needed to know Windows 11, it will be more generic. For example, this Section 1.3 specifically says, given a scenario, use features and tools of the Microsoft Windows 10 operating system. But other sections in here, as we keep scrolling, given a scenario, use the appropriate Windows settings. That means Windows 10 or Windows 11. So you have to kind of parse this out as you're stepping through the exam objectives as to which one makes sense and what you need to know in those and if they make sense. So make sure you're familiar with all of that as we break it down, as we step through it. Pretty important to know about that. Let's see. Other questions that have come through. I need to find out where I left off in this list. Scroll. Other questions. Let's keep this moving. I'm sort of scrolling through and reading as we go through here. All right, you guys, this is a common one. I'm going to bring this up just because I think it's curious. This is the second study group where someone has asked about my skincare routine. I'm a guy. I'm not much into skincare, quite honestly. But it says I look about 10 years younger now than the 901 videos I did 10 years ago. That's just good living, people. Just keep doing. I'm just going to keep doing whatever it is I'm doing. I'm not sure what makes that happen. We'll figure it out. Other questions. Let's keep the party going here. Other things here. Maybe I'm a vampire. That's what it is. We're going to go with vampire. Except I go out during the day. That doesn't work either. So vampire doesn't work. Never mind. Other questions in here. Scroll. I like this question. I have a 7-year-old custom gaming PC. What core of the A+, if any, would help me rebuild and start out working again? Both are good because obviously the computers you're using need both hardware and networking, and they need operating systems. And you need both of those, right? So the Core 1 is hardware, networking, and troubleshooting those. And that's probably, if you're really building a machine, you'll probably want to start with Core 1. Once you get the machine built and you want to manage the operating system, make sure you're able to maintain the file system, make sure you're able to repair parts of the operating system, that would be the Core 2. So figure out which one of those makes sense for the configurations and the gaming PC that you'd like to put together, and you can focus on those. Let's see. Other questions as we step through here. Scroll. Keeping it going. this is something I would really recommend that you do on your side, because I think it'd be valuable to understand what's going on, not just for this scenario, but in general. So George writes, I'd be interested in seeing what a packet capture looks like between my IP and YouTube. And in fact, it might be a good thing to do a packet capture of my streaming server. I've mentioned this, the streaming server that's right up here. It has its own IP. It's its own device. The device is actually down here. You can kind of see this tiny little screen to my bottom right that I'm pointing at. It's kind of hard to see. Where's my torch? There we go. So there's a box down here, and this box right there is the one doing the streaming, when I've got the light on right there. So it's a piece of hardware doing the streaming for me. There's a lot of reasons I chose that option. That'd be a great one to do a packet capture, though. It is remarkable how interesting the packet captures are when you get to that point, not just between you and YouTube, but have a look at different packet captures you're doing to other locations, to an SSH versus a telnet. Have a look at a encrypted website versus one that's not encrypted, and look at the differences there, and break down all of the different layers. Look at the DLC layer with the MAC addresses. Look at the layer 3 information with IP addresses and the flags in the IP part of the header. Have a look at TCP and UDP information and how different that is depending on what protocols you're using. That's the important part. And breaking those down. I think you should absolutely download Wireshark and start doing some captures. It's a very useful tool to not only know how to use, because quite honestly, it solves so many problems in IT. The packets have all of the knowledge. The packets tell you everything. Packets are able to determine whether your slowdowns are on the network or the application. Packets tell you, they solve everything. That's why whenever you're having a problem and you talk to tech support, and the first thing they say is, well, do you have a packet capture? Because if you have a packet capture, that's it. It's like a fingerprint, like DNA. There's no denying this happened. And you can really break down exactly what's going on in the network. So get familiar with Wireshark. Even if you're just doing the basics to start off, capture data, view the data. I'm not expecting everyone from day one to be able to interpret the results of the packet capture. That part takes a little bit of time. That's a definite curve to be able to get into, but it's a valuable use of your time, because you will be able to solve any problem as long as you have the packets. And it's a very valuable tool in general, not just in networking, but in application development. It's a good tool to use for security. It's a good tool overall. Wireshark is free. Go to wireshark.org, download it, install it, run it. Valuable. Get it, do it. Learn how to look at those packets. My entire direction in IT changed when I learned how to look at the packets. In my case, I started working for Network General. I became a systems engineer at Network General, and I was showing other people the value of having these packets in this device. Now you can just get off the internet. You can download Wireshark and you've got access to all of these packets. That didn't used to be that way. Now everybody can look at packets. And yet I don't think we've done a very good job in the industry of teaching about the packets. I think many people see it as overly complex and perhaps don't understand the value in having that information, but it is incredibly valuable. And there's a whole set of strategies on how do you get the packets. What is the best way to gather the packets? Then what's the best way to view them and analyze them? The best way to get started is to load up Wireshark, start doing some captures, and stumble through. There's a lot of great videos on the internet. Look at Laura Chappell's information. She is a longtime expert in packet captures. Fantastic stuff to deal with. So really, really recommend you go out to the wireshark.org and grab that. Should be relatively easy. In fact, they have the latest version looked really good on the Wireshark website. Here we go. There we go. First page, download, learn, go beyond. So you've got places to go. You can go download the latest version right now. 4.02 is the latest version. I'm probably not even running the latest version on my system, and it gives you the options on what you can use to be able to work it. I've got a Mac OS ARM 64-bit. That's what I would use. I haven't even installed it yet. Latest version on December the 7th is the one that you can download and use. Good stuff. Go get that. And if you don't, there's certain tools you should always have on your system. Wireshark is one of those. Very, very useful tool. Let's see what other questions you have. I know we're past the hour here, but I want to see if anybody else has some other things that we can break down and have a look. I see a number of folks are just getting here. You've come in at the end, but if you do have a question, we're still live for the moment. I can get a couple more in here. Here's a great frequently asked question from Dirty Monkey. Says, would you recommend studying both 1101 and 1102 simultaneously, or should I pass 1101 and then study 1102? If you go back to the exam objectives that I brought up earlier, the exam objectives were able to show you exactly what's on both of these exams. And if you really break them down, one of the things you'll find is that there's not much overlap between either one of those. So you can, and what I recommend is that you pick one of those to do first. Let's say you pick Core 1. You study everything in Core 1. You learn everything on those exam objectives. You get hands-on. You get a book. You watch the videos on Core 1. You do hands-on with Core 1. You do some practice questions with Core 1. Then you take the Core 1 exam and you pass the Core 1 exam. Then you can completely shift your gears over to Core 2. There's really nothing on Core 1 that is going to be on Core 2 and really nothing on Core 2 that's going to be on Core 1. Not a lot of overlap there. So you can completely shift gears at that point and then study for Core 2. Unless you are already in the industry, you're already familiar with these technologies, you've already very familiar with Windows, you're already very familiar with hardware and the networking and the security and the port numbers and everything else, then you might consider doing both simultaneously and taking the exams even back-to-back on the same day. I know people that have done that. Do not recommend that at all. Never. In fact, I would never do that myself. I generally want to see people studying for one single exam at a time, passing that exam, and then shifting gears over to the other. I think that will save you a lot of stress. It'll save you a lot of time. It'll save you a lot of pain. So that's what I would recommend, is doing one single exam at a time. That's what I would highly, highly, highly recommend. Along those lines, and we mentioned this earlier, that there's no specific waiting period or time that you have to worry about between taking those two exams. As long as both of the exams come from the same version, you can take them years and years apart if you want to. For example, you could have taken the Core 1 and passed it in April of 2022. You could take the Core 2 and pass it in October of 2025, and you'll be A+ certified. So it'd be 3.5 years is the maximum. So I guess if you had to set it, you have to make sure that it's somewhere in that 3.5 year time frame, because as soon as this version retires, you can't take the second exam anymore. You would have to start over all over again. So don't do that one. That's not what you want to do. Take one exam at a time, and don't worry, there's no time frame. There's no deadline between those two. There's nothing you have to rush through. Just make sure they're from the same exam version and you're fine. That's what I would do as well. And this sort of along those lines, Byron asks, my A+ expires September. Okay, so you've got most of the year to renew your certification. How can I renew it? As part of the YouTube video description of this video, I have a link to a YouTube video I made of how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And it focuses on using CertMaster CE, which is an online computer-based renewal program that you can do without having to collect any CEUs. You don't have to take any other industry exam certifications. You don't have to take any third-party certifications. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You simply do the online CertMaster CE and you're renewed. So that's the one I highly recommend. Those of you that are renewing, that's a great way to renew, because you don't have to worry about collecting CEUs or taking exams. And there are pluses and minuses, but you might want to. You might want to take a higher level industry certification or a higher level CompTIA certification to renew your lower level certifications. That's a perfectly valid way to renew an existing A+ Network Plus or Security Plus. So I would really recommend you look at the renewal section of the CompTIA website. They have a table and it tells you what exams will renew lower level exams. So if you have an A+, if you were to take Network Plus and pass it before September, you would then have Network Plus and A+ renewed for 3 years. So that's the beauty of doing those renewal. But not everybody wants to take an exam or has time to take an exam or can take an exam. So CertMaster CE might be a better solution for you. So have a look at both of those. I detail the advantages and disadvantages of almost all of these renewal methods in that video of how to renew your certification in just a few hours. So I step through renew with a CompTIA certification. What are the advantages and disadvantages? Renew with a third-party certification. What are the advantages and disadvantages? I go through all of those. So that's a good video for you to check out as everything you might want to see. And I think at that point, we're now well over our hour mark. I think that's a great place to end this. I want to thank you for being here in the first hour. We had so much that we went through in our first hour Q&A. It's always fun to go through that. I have another first hour of Q&A in 2 days. Come on back on Thursday. We'll do a Core 2 A+ study group. And then, of course, next week is Network Plus. The week after that is Security Plus. There's always something going on. Make sure you check our calendar to know exactly when the next live event is going to be. And you can, of course, find that from the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website, or simply browse to professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for being here. We love doing these. It's great to have the chat room here and have the questions being asked and answered. We love it. And we're so glad you were able to join us in this first live stream of the new year. Come on back on Thursday. We'll do this all over again with Core 2. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.